Okay, so I'm Jessica Robinson. I'm the founder of Better Said Than Done. Thank you, thank you. And Better Said Than Done is a true personal storytelling show. So we have 2 shows a month normally, and every month we have a theme, except for this month. So this is our improv storytelling show. This is our 5th annual night at the Improv. And the way this show works is we're going to force the people who've signed up to be storytellers tonight to get inspired on the spot to tell a story based on what is going on here tonight. So we're going to play a couple little improv games, but they're more improv storytelling games. And then the storytellers, and I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of people who've never done this before here with us tonight. The storytellers can get inspiration from anything that anyone up here says, or anyone out there says for that matter. So if someone says something about alligators in one of their stories, and you have a story about an alligator, you can tell a story about an alligator. That actually happened, I think, last year or the year before. So if during my banter right now, I say something about alligators and you have a story about an alligator, you can use that, even if no one else says anything about it. If the audience calls out a word, you can use that for inspiration. If a scene inspires you to come up with a story, you can use that. For those of you who are not telling and are here as audience members, I would definitely encourage you to call out fun words when we have our audience participation part. And also I would ask you to be generous, because what we're asking the storytellers to do tonight is make up stories on the spot. So all our stories are true and personal, and they're usually very well formed, but tonight we're going to be a little bit more generous with people because they're literally writing them right now. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to do a little improv game. And I think I'll just call the first 4 storytellers up to introduce themselves, and then we'll call the next 4 storytellers up to introduce themselves. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. Richard, Catherine, David, and Sandra. Since it's the autumn, I like apples. So when you introduce yourself, say your name and your favorite dish or drink made out of apples. And I will say I am having the bad apple drink right now, and it is delicious, so that's my favorite thing.
I am Sandra, and apples are very fine, but they are nothing but a caramel delivery system. So my favorite drink is caramel flavored vodka mixed into apple juice. It's healthy.
Yes.
Well, I'm Richard, and I think my favorite apple thing is my wife makes an apple pie that is just fabulous. But it's not a standard pie; it's more like a custardy, thick thing with apples in it. Anyway, it's great.
My name is David, and my favorite apple dish is actually raw apples. I eat them pretty much every day, and it's hard to improve upon them. Sorry about your wife, but it's nature's candy. I mean, how can you not like it?
Good evening. My name is Catherine, and I love apples dipped in cheese fondue.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that you guys, I have a lot of dishes I'm going to eat tonight, except for what David said. And my daughter loves apples too. In fact, at daycare, they nicknamed her the Apple Princess because she will eat like 4 a day if we let her get away with that. Before you guys go, we're going to play a little game. This is a scene imagination game. We're going to go apple picking. And in this game, you don't have to keep this real. This is not the part where we tell a true story. We're at an apple orchard to pick apples. What are you carrying and why? And just step forward when you have your idea.
I'm carrying a stepladder because I want to get to the high apples that no one else can get to.
And I have not only my standard bucket of caramel, but I have a chainsaw to get all those apples down quickly and also to peel them.
I'm bringing a blanket so that I can watch them do the hard work.
I guess I'm the only one with a basket to actually carry the apples away when I get them there.
All right, good job. Robert, Kathy, Sufyan, and Michael. Please come to the stage. So we're going to introduce you guys, and 'tis the season for scary movies. So give us your name and your favorite scary movie, or if you don't like scary movies, the scary movie that you hated the most.
My name is Kathy, and I hated the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then I stopped watching that kind of movie.
My name is Michael. I'm not into scary movie, but there's a movie that really scared me. It's like, it's I forgot the name.
It's so scary. You don't
That's right.
My name is Robert, and that movie scared me to death too.
My name is Sufyan. I'm from Russia, so there is this Russian movie called V. And the main character there found himself among these like demons and stuff, and he put a chalk circle around himself. And everybody, all these like horrible creatures tried to break in, and it was so horrible that the only safe place I imagined was inside that circle, and so I didn't want to even be outside of the TV, but inside the circle with him.
Okay, I have a feeling you guys are not going to be good at this game, considering your answer. But I'm going to stick with scary movies because this is improv. So yay, let's see what happens. Okay, so again, this does not have to be a real story. Hopefully it isn't a real story. But paint a scene for us of a moment in a scary movie or in your imagination that is the scariest scene that you can imagine. And I can play along too as host. It's my prerogative. Bobby Brown, anyone? No? Okay. I love the scene, or I hate the scene, depending on how you think of it, in Alien, the first one, Alien, where Dallas, right, that was his name, he's moving down one column and they have the little thing and it's going beep, beep, and Sigourney Weaver's like, it's getting closer, get out of there. And of course then he dies, but you don't see anything, but it's so scary. Anyone else have a scary moment they want to share with us?
You actually just took my scene. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, all right, not so good.
I'm going to share with you a scary moment that is actually not from a movie. It was from the time when I was young and I was dating. Yes. So I was in college, and I have this girl. We go out together, and I was in China then. So at the time, in the evening, all the kids go to study, and we will go to classroom, and we'll look for a classroom that is empty. It is so hard to find a classroom that is empty because all the kids are hardworking, and we stumble into one. It's crazy. Like there's one classroom that is empty there. So we sit down, and then we actually sat at like different table, but neighboring table. And then as we were studying, there was a sound like the desk being moved. Like, grr. And I said, "Did you move your desk?" And she said, "Did you move your desk?" I said, "No, it's odd. Something in our ears maybe." And then it happened again. Like the desk get moved. And then this time we said, let's get away from this. So we left the classroom. It's like this weird sound. We left the classroom, and then we asked around, because most of the classroom are packed with students. This is the only classroom that is empty. We asked our classmates and teachers, "What's going on there?" And we heard this weird sound. And they said that last year there was a girl student, hang herself there. And then the classroom was haunted, and no student want to study there, and we were kind of stumbled.
Well, Jessica mentioning Alien reminded me of when I first saw Alien when I was a teenager. It was my parents were out, and they were going to be out late, and they let me and my friend Tom, my best friend, we were teenagers, to stay home, and we had this early version of cable TV, called On TV, which just played 2 movies at night. We'd go on in the evening, and we thought, oh, Alien's going to be on. We get to watch this, right? And so we're sitting there, and we have the lights out. We're in the living room, and we're watching the movie. And by the time it got to the scene you're talking about, we decided that we needed the lamp on because, we couldn't see the popcorn we had, and then when the chest burster thing came out, right, and then so we turned on the lights in the kitchen, so we could get there easily, in the bathroom light we needed. And by the time the movie was over, all the lights are on in the house, and my parents came home, and my dad's like, "What the hell is the back porch door doing open? Why is everything on? Lights are on?" And we said,
Well, when I was a kid, I was afraid of dry cleaner because I saw this movie. What was it? With the child kid, Chitty Chitty Ben Ben, and anytime when my parents would hear the sound of the dry cleaner, they would say, "Okay, Sufyan will be there like in no minute," and I would like run in the house and try to hide somewhere, and I would hide at one place, then would hide in another place, and then finally like somebody would say, "You lay down, we'll like cover you," and when this child catcher comes, then we'll just say, "It's just a log, don't worry about it." So that movie really scared me.
I actually remember a very important details of the story that I told you. Because I just mentioned, because I sort of recollect something happened like 30 years ago. Because I just mentioned that the desk moved mysteriously, but the thing that drove us out of the classroom is actually not the desk moving mysteriously. Is that we heard breathing on your ear, like someone was breathing just very close to my ear, and it was like, "What?" And that's really scared the shit out of us, and then ran out of the classroom.
Nothing to do with the movie, but for years I lived in California and I kind of craved this old East Coast charm, and we came back one summer, I think it was 2000, on a holiday, and ended up staying in Durham, North Carolina, in this beautiful old inn that had fireplaces in the bedrooms. It was probably a 200-year-old house. And I found myself coming back that way on a business trip some months later, and I thought, I'm going to stay in that beautiful place again. Well, it turned out when I arrived, the owner of the inn, he liked to tell you the story about the house when to all his new guests, and he didn't remember I'd been there before. And he says, "Well, you're going to stay in the bedroom of the owner's wife who died mysteriously many years ago," and he was so aggrieved that he buried her outside the kitchen window, basically. She's still there in the yard. So I had my little gas fireplace in this room, and I'm laying in this big featherbed, and I'm just like, oh, this is all this great East Coast charm. But somewhere about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the flames going, and I just saw her kind of rise up, and this sort of ghostly figure in a white gown, a very young woman with dark hair. She was very pale and very sad. And she looks at me, she's like, "What the hell are you doing in my room? Get out!" Anyway, I was scared to death, and I've never gone back to that place since.
Okay, so here comes the fun part.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, you can go home, Kathy, you're all done. So, storytellers, if you have any ideas throughout the night, hopefully you do, just wave at me, let me know, and I will call you up here to tell a story. But now we get to ask the audience a couple questions. This is the audience participation part. So audience members who are not storytellers, just call out. Someone give me a noun.
Clown.
Cloud or clown?
Clown.
Clown? Oh, you're thinking about horror movies. Clown. Okay, storytellers, keep clown in your mind if you really want to. Now, how about a feeling? Anxious. Yeah, sorry, I sent you down this path, didn't I? Anxious. And then how about a mode of transportation?
Paddleboard.
Paddleboard. Thank you for taking us to the tropics. Paddleboard. Okay, and how about a location?
Aruba.
Aruba, okay. Or anywhere, I would say, in the Caribbean. So, storytellers, put on your thinking caps. If anyone has a story, just wave, and as I said before, I can also play along. This is the part where we tell stories.
a story that include all the four, or just one?
Okay, thank you for asking the question. So anything that you have heard here tonight can be inspiration for a story. We're going to be very liberal with how you interpret it. You do not have to incorporate everything you've heard. It doesn't have to be the exact word. Someone said Aruba. It can be anywhere in the Caribbean if you have an idea for a story about the Caribbean. It can be anything about a clown. Or anything about anything that came up earlier, like scary movies or apples. Come on up here, Michael. Michael Zhuang.
So that has to be like at least 15 years ago. I bought a last minute tickets to Madrid. And since it's last minute, I bought it cheap. I have to look for cheap tickets. I flew there, and it turned out that the neighborhood that I live wasn't very good. And I used the subway there, and I get robbed. I lost everything. When I was robbed by like 6 or 7 kids, I was protect my passport because I thought it was most important, and my plane ticket. At the time, the plane ticket is like paper plane ticket. I protect my paper ticket and a passport. I lost my whole wallet and my camera. So I still actually stay in Madrid for 2 more days, and the last day, the third day, I returned to the U.S. But because I bought a cheap ticket, I wasn't taking a direct flight. I have to fly to London, and there is like a 2-hour train seat in London. Change plan. The thing is that because I bought a cheap tickets, the transit is not in the same airport. I would fly into the Luton Airport. Have to take a train from Luton Airport to Paddington Station. Maybe not Paddington, another train station in London, and then took the tube to Paddington Station, and then from Paddington Station I had to take the Heathrow Express to Heathrow. So that is 2 hours. My plan was to take a cab, okay, instead of using public transportations. And with a cab, I can basically on time. But now I lost all the money when I get on the flight. In Madrid, I have like 20 pounds left. That was basically my pocket money that I exchanged into pounds in the airport. So we were sitting on the plane. I only have a 2-hour transit, remember, very, very tight. I have to use transportations. When I was sitting on the plane, the pilot announced that passenger will have to wait because there was 2 passengers not boarded yet. I said, I can't afford to miss the flight. And then this passenger must be wandering around in the airport and not boarded. And then the pilot decided to wait for them. That's crazy. And then we wait for another like 5 or 6 minutes. The pilot spoke again. He said, well, since this passenger is missing from the flight, we have to take out their luggage, their check-in luggage. No way, because then we see all the airport staff coming below the plane, and they begin to open up, and then they begin to take out the luggage. And apparently their luggage is very deep, so they have to take out other people's luggage to get to their luggage. And as these people are halfway through it, the pilot announced that, oh, good news, the 2 passengers show up, and now we have to put the luggage back. But then he said, but we missed the takeoff slot. We have to wait for the next takeoff slot, and we don't know when it's going to come. I said, good, I have 2 hours only, and then now we have to wait for the slot. So that the next 15 minutes will feel like 2 hours, literally. I have to wait, but it's actually not that long. So 15 minutes later, the pilot brought in the good news that we have a takeoff slot, and promised me I'll fly very fast. So we took off, and indeed the pilot flew very fast, and we got to Luton Airport on time. I was ecstatic. It's great. Now I only need to get on the plane, get on the train, take the tube, and then get on the train again, and we'll get to Heathrow Airport on time, right? And at the time there was before September 11, so the airport check is not as tight as nowadays. So I thought I would have enough time. And then I have to take a bus to the train stations. And then there's this little TV at the lobby of the train station. At the time there was no big screen TV. It's like this little TV, black and white, hanging on the wall. That says that there is a train accident somewhere in England. A train accident. I said, oh, please, not the line that I'm taking to London. Please. And went to the window, ticket window. I bought a ticket. I said, that's good news, because if there's train accident in our line, they said that definitely wouldn't sell me the tickets, right? So good news. So I got the tickets. I still have some wondering, right? So I stand there in the platform, and the train came. I said, great. Then now I don't have to worry about. Got on the train going very fast, looking at beautiful England countryside. I kind of relaxed, and then suddenly the train came to a stop. And captain in the train said, passenger, there is a train accident ahead of us, so all of you get off here. I'm looking around, and this is the England countryside. It's not even London yet. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I don't have money to take the cab. What do? I got out of the train and I look around and said, now I'm stuck in England and in the countryside as well. What do? I have no money. And then I saw the tube sign, the London tube signs. So the train captain was very careful. They sort of brought us as close as possible to London and then sort of dropped us to the closest tube sign. So I hopped on the tube and got to Paddington, and I have like 40 minutes left. 40 minutes before the plane take off. And I was like, I have to catch the next train, and the next train is like 5 minutes away. And I said, if I catch the next train, 20 minutes later I'll get to the airport, and I still have time. I still have time. I still can catch the flight back to the US. So I go to the window to buy tickets. I brought in my last like 20 pounds, actually 10 pounds after the tube. Last 10 pounds that I exchanged into pounds in Madrid, and I give him. I say, Heathrow Airport, and he looked at the pounds and said, well, your pound bill is just out of circulation 1 week ago. We have a new bill now, and this bill is out of circulation 1 week ago. I said, only 1 week ago? Can you just take it, please? My plane is about to take off in 40 minutes. Can you just take it? No, sir, I cannot take an outdated bill. You have to go get a new bill. And the Bank of England is very close. If you go this way, that way, this way, that way, you will get there in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Even if I know how to get there, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back is 30 minutes. I will miss the flight. I said, I literally nailed down to beg him to give me a ticket. But he wouldn't budge. This Englishman wouldn't budge. So I said, shit, now in the last step, I'm still stuck in England. I try my best, I'm stuck in England. And what do? I will become a vagabond, basically, homeless in England. And as I was thinking about what should I do next, I saw there's a vending machine, a ticket vending machine. And I thought to myself, if they just changed the bill last week, if the bills just went out circulation last week, maybe they didn't get a chance to change the code in the vending machine yet. But I wasn't sure, but that's the last chance I have. Maybe the vending machine would eat my bill, right? So I went to the vending machine, ticket vending, I stuck my bill in. I wait, and bling, out came a ticket. And that's the reason I'm still standing here. Not being homeless in London. So that's my travel story that was filled with anxiety.
As I stopped to rest, the words of the cheerful lady park ranger kept echoing in my mind. Very few people die climbing Half Dome. Very few. I watched that in a video made by the Park Service to prepare you for your day hike and attempt to climb Half Dome. Earlier this year, I went on kind of an adventure of a lifetime. I went to Yosemite National Park and volunteered with the Park Service for a week building trails, and then I was hiking the John Muir Trail through the mountains. And when I applied for my permit to hike the John Muir Trail, I saw an option on the application was check here if you want to apply for a permit to climb Half Dome. And I didn't really know anything about Half Dome other than there's tons of these beautiful pictures of this rock formation in Yosemite, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And so I applied, and I got the permit, and I got my approval to climb Half Dome. And fast forward to just a few weeks ago, and I'm about halfway up the cables. So I should explain that Half Dome was well known in California. Yosemite Valley, before it became a national park, was actually a kind of a tourist destination. It had also been used for livestock ranching, but it was well known in California as a tourist destination. The rock formations around the valley were well known, and Half Dome had a reputation as being unclimbable. Like there was this idea that no one would ever get up Half Dome because it was too tall, too steep, too smooth. And then in I think the 1910s, a blacksmith that lived in Yosemite Valley had this idea that he would simply install a way to get to the top. So that Half Dome actually, it's not that hard to get close to the top. There's ways you can walk to get pretty close to the top, but there's a few hundred feet at the very top that are just steep, relatively smooth granite. So this blacksmith had this idea that he would just pound iron bolts into the rock, just, one at a time, keep going, and string ropes between them. And he did that until he had a rope strung all the way to the plateau at the top of Half Dome, and he climbed it that way. And he was the first person known to climb to the top of Half Dome. When Yosemite became a national park, eventually they reinstituted this system. And every spring, they install steel posts along the slope going up to the top of Half Dome and string steel cables along those posts. And if you want to, you can climb this route up Half Dome. At its steepest, it's about 47 degrees, which when I read about it, I was like, well, that's not so bad. That's like way less than 90. I can walk that. There's a rope, no problem. And I had no interest in actual rock climbing, but like you don't need any gear for this. Like you just walk all the way up to near the top, and then there's a rope. You pull yourself up. So about halfway up the cables, I'm feeling about as scared as I've ever felt. I should also mention that I'm afraid of heights. And part of this trip of a lifetime is I actually got separated and divorced this year, and my ex-wife, who knows me like better than anyone in the world, had offered some opinions about my personality, and some of them included that I was kind of risk averse and not very adventurous as a person. And so I decided to go on this big adventure, not to prove her wrong, but because I thought she was right. And I wanted to become a different kind of person, less scared of taking risks, more adventurous. And 200 feet or so up the Half Dome cables, where you are hauling your, in my case, fat ass up the steel cables at a steep angle, I realized I was being a little too adventurous. And that there was, and this also is at the end of a long hike. Like I was actually climbing Half Dome near to sunset after hiking all day to get up there and climbing total around 5,000 feet that day from the valley floor to Half Dome. And I'm hauling myself up and I realize I'm running out of strength. And I don't know for sure I can get to the top. And I've literally never been this scared before. And I kept thinking about that video, and I kept thinking, like, they're gonna write about me in the Washington Post. Local man suffers fatal midlife crisis. And I look up at my travel companion, who's way ahead of me, a friend I had met that week on the volunteer vacation, who very gamely, she also wanted to climb Half Dome, and it just worked out that we could go there together, so we were climbing together. She had gotten some advice from people in the park that she should get like a rock climbing harness and clip onto the cables, and that way, if you fall, you're only gonna fall till the next post down, and you can get yourself back up. So she had some like actual safety equipment, and I didn't, and I had rigged something up based on, inspired by her setup, that I had some extra gear straps in my pack and a big carabiner that came with my GPS. So I rigged up this thing and attached it to my belt. But like, I kind of knew this was like a rock climbing placebo. It's not really gonna hold if I fall. Like I'm over 200 pounds, like these gear straps, they're just gonna go like that if I actually fall. And every time I stop to unclip from one length of cable and clip onto the next one, I'm taking time, and that time is costing me energy, and my arms are like starting to shake and getting weaker and weaker. And I decide, probably the best thing I should do is just go as fast as I can. So I look ahead at me, at Blair, and like I know she'd be really freaked out if she saw me do this, but she's not looking backwards. So I don't want to, I know I'm not going to upset her, so I just unclip. I got nothing to hang on to except the cable in my hands, and I just start pulling myself up as fast as I can. And eventually I get to the top. And at the top, I actually have to lay down on the rock because I'm so tired. And Blair and I spend about half an hour walking around the plateau at the top. And Blair, who's quite a bit younger than I am, tells me, I think this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And I felt honored to be present when someone had an experience that they felt like was the coolest thing they've ever done. And I look at her and I said, that was the scariest thing I've ever done. But I'm glad I'm up here and like it's over and I'm alive. And she's like, we do have to go down. Which is also climbing down the 45-degree slope. Thankfully, you're lowering yourself instead of pulling yourself up, but that was scary too, and I did that as fast as I could. And then we get down to the end of the cables, and we have to go back down the way we came up. And going back down involves climbing down what's known as subdome, and that's a stone staircase and some amount of just bare rock that you have to climb down, about 800 or 1,000 feet down. And as I mentioned, we climbed to the top around sunset, so it was actually getting dark as we were climbing down, and we're just going as fast as we can because we want to get off of this. Sometimes you can't even see where the trail is, granite slope, as it's getting darker and darker. And we do finally get to the bottom of that around when it's like really getting dark, like we have to turn on our headlamps. And we both just plop down on the dirt and start laughing because we're both still alive. And we looked at each other and said, like, I can't believe we did that, about 10 times in a row. And eventually, and then, we got up after resting a while and walked down to our campground. And at the end of it, I feel like I have now conquered my irrational fear of heights. I still have a very rational fear of falling to my death because I pulled some dumb stunt to prove I've still got it.
So when I heard anxiety, I went immediately to work.
Yay!
Maybe that's just me, I don't know. About 3 years ago, I was a government contractor. Again, not really the source of my anxiety. I was working for an agency that, luckily for me, had its offices, at least the offices where I worked, about 2 miles away from my home. Nice, easy commute. And also within easy walking distance of a Target. So that was lunchtime sorted. I should have had my paycheck directly deposited there. I spent so much time there. But the other nice thing for me there, not anxiety producing yet, is I'm an introvert. And this building had an underground walkway that you could get to the Target to without having to go outside, because who wants that? And also, since most of our agency had already moved to a remote location that accommodated most of those people, there weren't very many people left in our building. And as an introvert, I really enjoyed being able to walk down that walkway and not have to say hello to anyone, not make eye contact. I could just wander on my own and be happy. And that's what I did one day. It was actually 3 years ago this month. Went to Target for lunch, got some chicken tenders at the food court there. Got that with marinara sauce. I highly recommend it. Fine cuisine right there. Maybe picked up a few items because I never got out of there with just lunch. And walked back to the office, through the walkway, didn't see another living soul. Got onto the elevator and rode to my floor, no one there. Now usually when the elevator doors open, there might be someone out there in the hallway talking on their cell phone. That was all right. This time, this day, elevator doors opened, and there were 3 police officers there in, I'll call it riot gear because I don't really know. But what I did notice immediately was all 3 of them were holding automatic weapons. And all 3 of those automatic weapons were pointed at me. This was a new experience. But I was also a creature of habit, so I stepped out of the elevator. No one moved. 3 automatic weapons pointed at me just standing there clutching my lunch bag. I finally said, since none of them was going to offer any information, I said, "This is a drill, right?" "No, ma'am." I don't know what to do. We suggest you go back downstairs. And obligingly, at that moment, the elevator door opened again, and I backed into it, still clutching my lunch, and rode down to the lobby this time, not back to my tunnel on the first parking level. And all the active shooter training that they make you sit through was running through my brain. I got off at the lobby. Actually, I didn't get off. The doors opened, and I stuck my head out just a little bit. Didn't see anyone. That didn't really make me more comfortable, but I thought, I can't stay here. I've got to go. I took one step out, and there was a police officer by the doors to the parking lot, and he was giving me the sign to, I don't know, run into home or whatever it is that baseball people do. And I don't run well, but I hustled as well as I could out the front door and into the parking area. And whereas my journey from Target to the office in the tunnel had been very solitary, very quiet, on the street level, every police officer in Fairfax County and every helicopter in Fairfax County was out in mass. It was wall to wall. There were no walls out there, but law enforcement everywhere. I wandered a few feet from the building, not knowing what to do, still clutching my lunch, and wandered toward a few other office workers who were there, and were all kind of like, "What's going on? I don't know what's going on. I don't know." And we stood there, and my phone buzzed. It was a text from one of my office mates. "You okay?" "Yeah, what's going on?" "Dude, active shooter." "Oh my God, are you guys okay?" "Yeah, we're locked in the office. We're all right." And all the while I'm thinking, didn't they tell you not to text? Your phone's gonna buzz. If he's in the suite, he'll get you. What's wrong with you? Stood out there panicking for my coworkers inside. They were panicking for me outside. They're like, "Dude, go home, go home." It's a walking distance, a mile, 2 miles, but I'm like, no, my car's inside. I'm not going back inside. Finally, after half hour, seemed like a long time, we got the all clear. I was able to go back up in the elevator into my suite. And eventually we learned that what had happened was we were due as an agency to have an active shooter drill at some point that month. And someone sent out an email about it. And someone who received that email wasn't a careful reader. Saw the words "active shooter at Skyline" and called the police. Messed up my lunchtime. So the two things I took away from that anxiety-inducing incident were, 1, read your emails carefully, please. And 2, if you're an introvert like me, it's not really going to kill you to take the surface route from time to time.
Now, when I was drafted into the Army, I'm in basic training, and I don't know anything from anything, I'm basic trainee, went on KP, which they did in those days, and the mess sergeant wanted to have a stereo system installed in his car, wanted to have the speakers put in all around. And there was a guy in our unit who knew how to do that sort of thing. And he happened to be on KB at the same time. So I'm back there with the pots and pans, and this guy comes over to me and says, "Hey, come on, I'm going to need another hand to help out with this." Well, okay, so mess sergeant is there. He's in charge of the kitchen. If he says I can go, I go. So we go outside, and he's got the kit to put the speakers into the car that had been bought. So he opened up the car and opened up the kit, but there's no wires in the box. It's got the speakers, but no wires. So I'm thinking, okay, back to the pots and pans. And he says, "Nah, come on, come with me." And he goes back in, and he picks up a clipboard. And he says, "Come on." And we walk, and then we walk outside, and there's a ladder against the wall. He says, "Grab that." So I grab the ladder, and I'm following him along. And we go between the barracks, and there is an intercom wire going from one building to the next, from the company headquarters to each building. And he says, put the ladder up against the wall. So we put the ladder up, and he climbs up, clips the wire. And I'm there, and he tells me to hold on to the clipboard. He says, nobody's going to bother you. Just hold on to that. And then he comes down, we walk over the other side, and I'm thinking I'm going to wind up in the stockade. I'll be locked up forever, dishonorable discharge or whatnot. We put up the ladder on the other side, clip down the wire. We go back over, we install speaker thing. And I'm there, hey, we're going to get into trouble. And he says, no, as long as you look like you know what you're doing, no one will ever ask you questions. And so we installed the speakers, and we went back to the mess hall, and we finished up our day. And then the next day, we heard that wires were missing between the buildings, and they couldn't make intercom calls and had to have runners do all that sort of thing. They never did figure out how the wires were lost.
So the keyword paddleboarding made me think of a story because I've never paddleboarded. So because it takes, coordination and balance and things that I don't possess. But the closest I've come was when I was a kid, when I was about 12, I went to Boy Scout camp in Inverness in Florida. It's in the north of Florida near Tallahassee for a week of canoeing, which I hadn't done much canoeing either. So went up there. As I don't know if you can see because I'm wearing long sleeves, but I'm a little hirsute, right? This is why I don't go out at Halloween, because people shoot at me with silver bullets. So when I was 12, I already had a beard, and I liked to wear an army jacket, and I went to public school, and I had a floppy hat. So the other Boy Scouts are dressed in Boy Scout uniforms, and the leader, a guy named Mr. Giuliano, who was an ex-Marine, called me Serpico, right, throughout the trip. And he was like, how you gonna do in the woods, Serpico? And so we get to the camp. My little brother was also a Boy Scout, so he went along, James. And we get there, and we had like a day at the camp. We're in a tent. It seems very comfortable, the beds were okay. So I'm like, well, camping's not so bad, right? Plus, I was kind of a tall kid, and I had all this hair, and the kids are playing like sports. Not in high school, junior high, I wasn't exactly athletic. I could identify a football in a lineup if you gave me several guesses, but I didn't actually, play or anything. But there, they said, hey, we want this guy, and they're pointing at me, to play, right? Because I was just big and I had this beard, and they called me like mean and nasty, which I would usually take as an insult. But then I had this odd thought, me? Mean and nasty? Yes, I will play this game with you, right? My most successful, I just stood there, and people would come running at me, and then they would drop the ball. And I thought, wow, this really isn't I could be a professional athlete if we did this, right? So, but that was just the one day of the camp. And then we went on the canoe trip. So we go on the canoe trip, we have this guide who's been up and down the river plenty of times. I've never been in a canoe. One of the other Boy Scouts is steering it, Jason. My brother's in another one. My brother is a little stubborn, James, and so when he got tired, he refused to paddle or steer, right? And so he would just stand there with his arms crossed. So they eventually put another Boy Scout in his boat. Yeah, he's like a king. And while my boat seemed to have the bow seemed to have this attraction to the shore and the woods. So we kept going into the woods and then out of the woods. And then the guide would say, okay, we've gotten to a point where we're gonna camp here for the night. Like Mr. Giuliano was a very nice guy, and he taught us a lot of stuff. And one of the things he taught us was that we should listen to the guide, because he kept saying, no, Troop 23, our troop, always excels, so we're going to go farther than anybody goes before. And the guy said, well, okay. So he took us, and we went farther until the sun started going down. He said, okay, we'll camp here. And the guide said, well, he says, no, we'll camp here, right, for the night. And the guide says, okay. Drops us off, and he says, I'm going to go back to the other camp. We're there, and the reason why they didn't want us to camp there is because it was like a mud pit. So we're sloshing around, we're getting dirty, there's no clean water. If we had stayed at that camp, right, that's a place where they had supplies, water, shower. So now we're dirty, but we excelled, right? And it seemed to be the pattern that we would keep excelling. And I was getting tired, but and we would do our dishes, and we were not experienced campers anyway. We were washing our dishes in the river, and then some of the other Boy Scouts upstream were peeing into the river, so that we would have like a combination of urine and water and muddy water, which really, was very clean. And so we do this for a week, and by the time we're done, I'm just tired of the whole thing. The boat never did get a handle on steering. We had to take a bus up there. I lived in Miami, so we take the bus ride back. The showers were broken, so we're there. We haven't cleaned. When we get there, my dad has a kind of prankish sense of humor, I would say. Yeah, he's what people might call a jackass, right? So he picks us up, and we're dirty, and all I'm dreaming of at this point is a shower, right? And he says, okay, he gets us in the car. He rolls down all the station wagon windows, because we stink to high heaven. And he says, you know what, I think we're going to go, Gloria. He's from West Virginia, so he sounds very Southern. And he's like, Gloria, I think let's go see that movie we want to go see. Let's go see Rambo, right? So he takes us to the movies, right? Not to home. He says we're going to go to the movies right then and there, right? And we're in the movie theater, and because we smell so bad, we sit in the second row, and nobody's around us for like 4 rows. We got the row to ourselves. Dad at least bought us popcorn, which was the best popcorn I ever had in my life, because we lived on K rations. The K must stand for crap, right? So, and I'm thinking to myself, well, it's like a typical story where you go through physical hardship and you test yourself, and you come out, and I thought, like many people, after you've, like David's story where you climb that mountain, I thought afterwards that was totally not worth it, so I never did it again. Thank you.
Growing up, I loved movies, and someone mentioned, the on TV. When I grew up, we had one of those TVs that you turn the channel, and it went all the way up to 11. And 11 was the classic movie channel. That's what played on channel 11. I think it was the Warner Brothers channel that's now the CW. So when my brothers and sister were outside playing in the sun, I was every weekend just watching classic movies. And I loved classic movies. I especially loved classic romances. And my dad was a big John Wayne fan, so of course I loved John Wayne, and of course his classic romance movie, The Quiet Man, with Maureen O'Hara. And that was the example of romance that I grew up with, this sort of idea that, women would fight off the man, and then the man would come, and eventually he'd just knock her over the head and drag her into his cave, and then they'd live happily ever after. And that's how I grew up. I was raised on those things. Well, jump ahead, let's say 31 years. After my first husband did not work out so well, I was single, and I was living in Ashburn, of all places. And this was back when Ashburn was new. And I was living there because I had a friend who had bought a townhouse that he intended to rent out but hadn't yet done so. So the neighborhood that I was staying, there was me and one other house that was rented, and the rest of the area was a complete ghost town. The streets weren't even paved yet. And I started dating this guy, we'll call John. And, when you're single in your 30s, you kind of just go out with anyone. So I was going out with this guy, John, and after the first date, I'm like, no, I don't want to be going out with John anymore. But he had gotten tickets to go to see a comedian at the DC Improv, and I knew him through a writing group. So I was like, listen, I don't think we should go out anymore. You can take someone else to go see this comedian. And he's like, no, we'll just go as friends. It'll be fine. So we go see this comedian, and it was fine. And then he drives me home to my deserted townhouse in Ashburn. And then I'm basically going to say goodbye to him for the last time, because I've told him we're not going out anymore, and this was just sort of our last final date. And I go to say goodbye to him, and he grabs me in one of those romance movie embraces, and grabs the back of my head and puts his arms around me and forces a kiss on me, just like Cary Grant would have done, right? Only it is the most disgusting thing I've ever experienced. Not only is it disgusting, but it is terrifying. Because even though he's not a big person, I can't get him off of me. And he finally lets me go, and then he just stands there, and I run inside my deserted townhouse, and I quickly slam the door, and I lock it, and then I go through every house, kind of the reverse of turning on all the lights, and I turn off all the lights, and I make sure the back door is locked, and I just stand in the middle of my deserted townhouse with my heart pounding, waiting to see if he's going to try to break into my townhouse. And he goes away, and he does not serial kill me, which is good, but he does send me these weird serial killer letters, like hand-drawn in the drawing style of like a 2-year-old, with like a picture of him and a picture of me holding hands with like a me and you with arrows drawn. And then like he sends me a picture of like what he and I, like what our baby would look like by like melting our faces together. And it's very creepy, and it's very weird, and it's very scary being single, living in a deserted townhouse in Ashburn. And he didn't kill me, but he completely destroyed my love of classic romantic movies.